Hey there everybody, Eric from Outer Limitless coming at you today with another knife video. Now in a prior video you may have seen me going back and forth, hemming and hawing, trying to determine which one of two knives I was going to keep. Now at the time it was between the Tops Tex Creek XL and the Tops Silent Hero. Now these two blades are excellent blades. I had both of them in my possession. I had gone between them both, found some pros and cons for each, and at the time I really could only afford to keep one of them, so I had to sell one off in order to keep the channel moving. And by looks of it here, you may think you know what my decision was. Well, ultimately that's incorrect. I actually kept neither one of them, but I had to sell them both off. No big deal. I knew at some point in time I'd probably get my hands on one of these great blades again, and I did find myself another Silent Hero, and here it is. So can you imagine what it must be like to be a gear reviewer and a blade reviewer and have these wonderful knives in your possession and never as much as even slice with them? I mean, I've thought about this blade over and over and over again since I got rid of it, and I've always wondered what it would feel like to use it. I knew it had some deficiencies in my mind from a comfort standpoint, but at the same time, I still felt as though it would be a great blade for me. I've always thought about it and wanted to get my hands on it again. So what I thought I'd do is basically use it today, finally for the first time, process myself down some wood. I got some friends coming over tonight. We're going to have a fire and just hang out by the fire tonight. And I knew I needed to process some wood, and I thought this would be a great opportunity to finally get my hands on this blade in a field use situation. Now this Silent Hero is the identical same model that I had the first time with the original Rocky Mountain Tread handle scales. The only difference I see is these are much more of a matte finish. The other handles I had, for whatever reason, seem to have had almost like a poly coat over them. They had a little bit of a sheen and a luster. They were a little more slippery feeling, and these are just completely bare and more like a matte finish. So anyway, I am very much looking forward to using this. Let's get things underway. It's pretty exciting getting to use this blade for the very first time. It has like a nice feel to it. I always like a knife with a nice finger choil. This has a little bit of a thin handle for me, so what it ends up kind of doing is just spreading my hands out more than I'd like. You know, this finger being down here and these fingers being up here, I'd kind of like a handle that's a little more balanced in terms of overall thickness. So I mean, you can see really the difference there and how it makes your fingers span. But anyway, should carve pretty nice. Let's get me some feathers going and start processing this wood. This log here should be pretty good. I don't need to go all the way from the top. Just gonna start part way down here and start getting a feel for the edge. So already you can tell this has a really nice fine edge. Real easy to find. I love blades with a nice flat grind. It's just really easy to find that edge geometry and ride the blade right down the wood, make some feathers, and get some wood processed. Start a fire. Nice little technique right there. Just kind of slicing down the wood from the top all the way to the bottom. It's really starting at the tip of the blade and running it down as far as I can. Just trying to carry that curl from the top of my cut all the way to the bottom. So that's just the start there of some nice fine little curls. I'll gather up a bunch of these and get it prepared and continue moving on. Split down a little bit of this bark here. Basically just using this knife to help me get between some of these layers. Let's fillet this stuff out just a little bit. Get me some bark here. Getting ready. It's getting very windy. I gotta find a place to stash all this stuff while I gather all the rest of my goods. I got some of these grasses here that should work pretty good. Nice and dry. Lots of it. Go. Nice little bundle here. Let's get that ready. These are totally done. And that is looking mighty nice. That's about done. It's time to eat. Not quite. That's close. So I think for this fire, I'm gonna go with an upside down style fire. I don't have a lot in the way of smaller wood, and so because I have larger logs, they're not gonna split down quite as nicely as I'd like with the tools I have available right now. So anyway, if I go with an upside down style fire, I can take the larger logs, lay them all the way, ring it around this fire pit, and then build up the smaller stuff on top, and hopefully then the embers will fall down, get the larger things to catch, and I'll have a fire that'll sustain the night. So as I mentioned, a lot of the wood that I have is larger logs. If you look in the size of my hands here, I mean, I have an axe right now, but I am not going to be splitting that down very effectively with an axe. Now I do have some smaller stuff like this that I can work on, and that will certainly be able to be split. So I'm going to grab some of these smaller logs, get them processed down with the axe, and then get some of these larger ones and actually use these to build myself a base for this fire. Alright, so hell if I really know what I'm doing. I'm just kind of making this up, but as I said, I was going to ring the fire in some of these larger logs, and then I set these in here as a base. Now what I'm going to do is build my typical fire right on top of that like I'd always do, And that way all the embers throughout the night are just going to fall down inside here and stay concentrated. And throughout the night too, all the edges of these logs will just start to dry out and char and get crispy and hopefully fall in. And I can push these into that ember bed and continue to keep these burning as things go. So anyway, I guess we'll see how it goes. Alright, so here's the final setup. Basically, as I had mentioned, I ring this entire thing in these larger logs. Then I put these sort of larger sticks in here just to help support the main body of my fire. I've gone with my typical square style starter fire with my nest in the middle, and I have a whole bunch of kindling prepared here to fuel this thing. Now what I'm ultimately hoping is going to happen is that the entire thing doesn't catch all at once, which I'm positive is not going to happen. And in fact, all those embers are going to fall down, build up on the inside of these logs, be contained on the inside, and then all these will eventually burn out and help sustain the fire for the longevity of the night. So I've never tried this before. I actually have no idea what I'm doing, but I thought it would be a cool experiment and certainly something to try. And especially since I only had these larger logs and didn't really have a good way to deal with them, I thought this might suffice. Now I managed to find myself some decent logs. These are pretty good. I know I can split these down real easy. I should be able to baton right down and through this. Figured it would be a good test for the Silent Hero. No problem there. That was sweet. So night is finally upon us. Kids are in bed. Took a quick shower, got changed, nice and comfortable, got a drink at my side. Fire is ready to go. So let's get this thing started up. I don't have time to waste. I'm going right with the lighter. And let's see if we can get this thing. Let's get this thing going here. Start to get some of my little twiggies. Get them on there, right on top. Some little pine needles. and I'll just keep fueling this thing. So we'll check in on this in a little bit and see how it's doing. This was kind of my own little landscape design, and it's pretty nice. I mean, it worked out for the most part. I don't do this stuff all the time, and I really only do it because I like it. I mean, it's a ton of work, but I do enjoy it, and I like having things that I've made that are functional and for the most part pretty much look good. So, you know, to have a nice big fireplace like this is pretty cool. Ties in with, you know, the best I could do for a patio, but just reusing some materials that were laying around this property. And, you know, works out pretty cool. So, anyway, I got to keep fueling this fire here. But I'll check in a little bit, see how we're doing. So far, so good. Working by design. All those hot embers falling right down inside there. That looks pretty good. So at this point, pretty much like 3 hours deep. I mean, maybe even a little bit more. If you look around here, you can see that, well, I'm getting totally smoked out. Hold on. But if you look here, you can still see some of those logs around the perimeter. That entire bed of embers. You can hear the sizzling from some of those larger logs that still have moisture in them. But it really worked just about perfect. Now, you're not going to be able to see this because it's pitch black beside me, but I barely used any of that kindling. All I really had to do is get this fire started with the original sort of square nest method there. And this thing just burned the whole night. And that's all I did was really just continue to push these logs closer and closer. Now there's a bunch of smoke just because it's so wet, but it is throwing off a ton of heat. This fire is just really warm, just a steady glow, tons of fuel. And it's gonna last, I don't know, probably the whole night tonight. But I mean, I gotta go to bed. It's getting late. And I'm gonna wrap this up for now. So what I'm gonna do is just spread these things out, get them opened up so they don't continue to burn quite so much, and hopefully they'll put themselves out eventually. But anyway, that was definitely a very great experiment and total success. I mean, this is hot. I actually kind of got to back up here. This is very hot. So, good stuff. So, it's the next morning. And I'd say that method was pretty cool. Definitely successful. I mean, if you look here, you can see this entire fire is definitely still has some heat going on, some smoke coming off. All these logs I pulled to the side so they wouldn't really burn aggressively. I just kind of spread them all out of the middle and knocked them over just to try to dissipate the heat so this thing would go out overnight, but it's still going. I mean, that's pretty cool. Definitely a neat experiment for sure. So anyway, that's it for the fire. Now, in terms about how I felt about the Silent Hero, I mean, it was pretty much what I expected it to be. A nice slicer, nice refined edge, able to make some nice shavings and feather sticks. It did a little bit of splitting for me last night. I obviously used it a little bit on preparing some food. I mean, you just saw a real quick clip of that. I definitely don't necessarily like, how deep a difference there is in the handle there. I found that, it is a little bit bothersome, but at the same time, I'll just kind of work with it, go with it, continue to use it and hopefully get a little bit used to it. I can say that this is not going to turn into my favorite knife, that's for sure, but it is a good quality, solid option. I have really been a big fan of the sort of 5.5, 6.5, 7-inch blade range size of knives, and this falls right in there. So I have a very particular thing I'm looking for. So for me, this is not really the ideal. There's a couple other blades out there that are a little bit better for me, but at the same time, this is a good quality, nicely made, beautifully finished. I mean, there's no doubt just beautiful fit and finish, but just a beautifully finished blade with good quality aspects to it. So anyway, it's nice to finally get my hands on it in the field, use it for actual slicing and some, little bit of wood processing. And after all this time and having sort of hemmed and hawed about whether or not to keep one, to actually have one that I've used now is just kind of nice. So anyway, that's about it. So alright guys, thanks for stopping by. I hope you like what you saw. I hope you found it a little bit informative. If you like what you saw, please like, share, and subscribe. And as always, thanks for stopping by. Take care now. I'll see you soon.